Where are you fellas from? Uranus. Hello to my fire signs, Aries, Leo and Sagittarius. Welcome to the Leo new moon. You'll find the timestamps for your rising sign listed below. Hello Aries rising, welcome to your horoscope for the new moon in Leo, happening on Wednesday the 16th of August at 7:38 p.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. This is a fresh start, Aries rising. This is an evening where we get to be like the fool and begin again. Jump off, take the step, see a cliff, jump off. Now we're going to be talking about a couple of different planets in this reading, but I first of all want to kind of steep ourselves in the significations of Leo for you in your birth chart. So if you're an Aries rising, then Leo rules the 5th house, and this is where we express ourselves. This is where we create art and beauty and magic, and it's kind of where we get to be a kid again. If you can think back to a time when you were unfettered about how you would express yourself, when you would make things up, when you would dress up, when you would paint and sing and laugh, all of that kind of stuff. And if you can think about that little version of yourself and then try and project their thoughts onto who you're becoming now and find a little bit of like support from them as far as them being super proud of you and thinking that you're really cool, then that would be like the best way to work with this new moon. We get to like ask for what we need at a new moon. We won't see the moon in the sky because it's buddied up with the sun. So it'll be a black night and we'll get to make some wishes. If you've got some creative projects on the go, Aries rising, then it would be a really great evening to write about them and to sort of, with a little bit of foresight, maybe project into the future of what you might like to have happen with these projects. That would be the best thing. Now, I'm filming these a couple of days before, but I'll be releasing them on Sunday, the 13th of August. And this is a really beautiful day in Leo, in your 5th house of creativity, because Venus retrograde will have met up exactly with the sun, and that's called a cazimi in some astrological circles. That's like a really kind of vibrant, hot conjunction with the sun. Venus will be a morning star from now on. It's kind of doing a bit of a crossover. So we'll see Venus in the morning rather than in the evening. And this is lovely. If we can sort of, I'm looking at the Empress card here actually. If we can work with this, if we can be the goddess on the mountaintop, the summit of beauty and love, if we can imbue all of our creative potential with the significations of the Empress, with that sort of fertile ground, that sort of pleasure-seeking nature. I've just got Roisin Murphy in my head now. I don't know if you're a fan of Moloko. I am a mad fan of both Roisin and Moloko. But that song, Pure Pleasure Seeker, you know, that's kind of what we're working with Venus in Leo in this cazimi. So hang on to this. Maybe if you're listening to them on the day that I release, then you can really kind of maybe think back to the year 2015 too, if you can, and have a think about your relationship with your creativity in the second half of 2015. What was going on? Was there a burst of kind of inspiration for you that you've been able to sow into your work as the years have gone by? I know it was 8 years ago. There's a great kind of like exercise that you can do with astrology is to kind of recall and recollect. You can go back to go forward. So think about 2015, think about your sense of expression, how you were translating the world around you, perhaps how that maybe changed as well, how there was maybe some sort of, not a rerouting, but like a refresher button on on that work that you've been making. And you don't have to be an artist per se, but like as far as how you express your perspective of the world around you. Think about 2015 and think about how that is maybe having some sort of kind of re-examination. Perhaps you can look to some of the blessings that occurred around that time for you and be grateful for them and extrapolate on them at this new moon. So the reason that we're sort of getting all full-like is because in some readings of the relationship with astrology and tarot, probably more modern examinations of that, the planet Uranus or Uranus is sewn into the idea of the Fool. We can sometimes, it's actually a really good visual reference for you if you're ever trying to decipher the difference between the different planets and their significations. And if you can learn with visuals rather than sort of chatter, just look to the Fool, because the Fool is our fresh start. The Fool is really unafraid to move sort of ahead into uncharted waters and to sort of like revolutionize, to change things up. That's what Uranus does. And the reason that I'm sort of being kind of focusing on Uranus in this new moon reading is because there's two aspects that are happening quite close with this new moon. The moon itself will be in square with Uranus. And we know that that's sort of like a pressurizing feeling. However, I kind of like to think that because it's the sun and the moon, the two luminaries are kind of in square with Uranus, and there's something of like an urge to refresh or an urge to maybe drop some fear around your creativity or around what you have in mind, your ideas, and to kind of feel the fear and do it anyway, as my mum says. So Uranus, since like 2018 or 19, has been in Taurus, and that's your second house of your values, your talents, and your access to resources. So maybe have a little think about that too. I think the first pass was in 2018, but then Uranus has been in Taurus since 2019. They won't move from there until 2026. So we've still got some time to kind of work with this like growing, brewing revolution around the way that you earn money, around your values as well, what you kind of hold dear and what you believe in, what your talents can be put to, if that makes any sense. So have a think about all of that stuff. Have a think about 2019 and think about maybe the kind of urgency to kind of start again. Because that's the square with the sun and the moon. And then a few hours after, at 11:53 p.m, I think it is, Uranus will then form trine with Mars in Virgo. So Virgo for you is your sixth house. This is kind of your like daily grind. It's sort of the repetition of hard work. That's what the sixth house talks about. Virgo is really meticulous and really detail-oriented, really practical. And you can see earth sign to earth sign, Virgo to Taurus, there's some support here. So it's kind of like an encouragement to use the bravery of Mars, which you're really excellent at, Aries rising. Mars is the planet that we look to guide you through this trip around the wheel. So use that kind of like feeling of like being unafraid to revitalize your access to resources, revitalize your relationship to your talents as well, if that's something that's sort of been maybe a little bit tricky for you to have faith in. Now, I've got also, in contrast with our beautiful Empress for Venus, I do have the Tower card here as well, because this is one of the cards that can speak to the energy of Mars as well. So if you prefer to look at pictures rather than to try and remember all of the details, One good way to look at Mars is to the glyph itself is a spear and a shield. So that's sort of, there's a bravery there, isn't there? There's sort of like a warrior kind of vibe. Also, the tower is power. And there's a disintegration of something that was built on unstable foundations in this card. Mars will often come in and destroy things that aren't working. So if that's your repetitious rhythm in the day, if you're feeling sort of like a slave to some kind of rhythm, maybe, then I think that Mars, maybe with the tower, is encouraging you to like blow over that house of cards. Because there's something that Uranus is trying to tell you. The Fool is trying to tell you, Uranus is trying to tell you that there's a different way or a fresh perspective that you can ascertain in regard to your talents, your self-worth, your abundance. That word makes me feel uncomfortable, abundance, but I guess it sort of works in this way. We know that we only need a little bit to have a beautiful life. So this isn't about sort of capitalizing anything. But as far as the way that you get there, the way that you feather your nest, the way that you have enough food in the fridge and the bills are paid and all of that kind of thing, it maybe doesn't have to be so much of a grind, is what this configuration is telling me. And if we do work with that new moon in Leo, then it's really telling me to make a little wish upon a star and to think creatively. All right, which deck? I think this one in the middle with my river rock. I'm just going to pull some intuitive tarot for this one, Aries rising, to cap it all off. I hope that you're feeling that Venus in Leo. I hope that maybe this little reading can be a little tiny burst of inspiration for you. If nothing else, then that's Venus. That's the Venus Cazimi working to the letter. But let's pull out some of these cards and see what else our guides have to say. Whew. All right, 3. All right, there's something here about coming together again. There's something here about a relationship that feels like home, that feels like synergy, that feels like, I don't know if you know, like when sort of one meets the other and when the mirror's working, you know, when you're sort of bouncing back and forth. I think that you've probably had some words with someone quite sharp. Got the Queen of Swords again. You know what happens when the Queen of Swords shows up. There's a kind of direct truth that's been given to you, Aries rising, in regard to some sense of relationship with somebody else. I love this version of the Two of Cups because it's sort of, there's a little marriage going on, but it's between two carny performers, you know, that sort of hack sort of dual costume. So yeah, they're both half a groom, half a bride, I'll put it that way. But above them is this beautiful anatomical heart with a pair of wings. And this is a great depiction of what the Two of Cups talks about. It's sort of massively healing, this sharing of vulnerability. And perhaps this Queen of Swords sort of said to you, look, this is the way it is. This is what I think. Don't be stupid. Have another look at this. The Ace of Swords is the truth. And this is something that sort of almost feels like it's coming from somewhere else too. It's bigger than us. Aries rising, it's bigger than us. This sword in its clarity, one sword we can really work with. It's undeniable, you might say. So if we can relate this maybe to the moon, we can relate this to your artistry. Maybe there's some sense of like collaboration that's been staring you in the eye and you can't look any further. And it's taken some sort of like time alone or time of retreat from that particular collaboration for you to be like, okay, I'm going to drop it. We actually really work really well together. That could be something that's going on here too. Or it might just be, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say it's hard to look past this card as being something really valuable. But I will say that this sort of connection does sort of, things can end, can't they? Without being a fatalist, nothing lasts forever. That's the truth. That's the sort of harsher truth of it. But that idea of nothing lasting forever shouldn't stop us from engaging in it, should it? Things like pleasure and love and beauty and connection are what makes being a human being worth it. And maybe sometimes there's fear attached to preempting the end, so we don't go there. We sort of keep ourselves safe or close ourselves off from that. When we feel that flutter or, receive that message, we can close off. This Queen of Swords, has said to you, this is what's going on. Take it or leave it, but this is the truth. Maybe you can use Uranus or Uranus and you can harness that kind of vibe at this new moon, and you can see the cliff and you can jump off. That's from Genesis Pjorge, the incredible lead singer of an incredible band called, I can't remember. God, that's just flown out of my head. Genesis Pjorge, incredible poet. And when talking about love, they said, see a cliff, jump off. And that's what this card says too. So, see a cliff, jump off. That's your reading, Aries rising. Isn't that funny how it just sort of left me? No, it's not coming back, and I'm not going to force it. I'm going to remember it as soon as I press stop on this, I'm sure. Thank you for being here with me, Aries rising. If you're still here, throw a line in the comments. That would be awesome. Much appreciated. If you want your birth chart read by me, there's an example of one here. You can head to umaribi.com and I can draw you one up and move through it with you. If you're wanting to know a little more about the goddess asteroids, I'm feeling more confident as I go on with my examination of them, and I've been gently starting to read the asteroids into a chart too. So if that was something that you'd like to hear more about, you can send me an email and we can talk about that. You can tip me at buymeacoffee.com/umaribi, and I'll be back with you in 2 weeks to discuss the full blue supermoon in Pisces. So it's called a blue moon because there's 2 full moons in August this year. So it's pretty exciting. I look forward to that one too. It's going to get psychedelic. Much love to you, Aries rising, and I'll see you very soon. You take care. Bye. Hello, Leo rising. Welcome to your horoscope for the new moon in Leo, happening on August the 16th at 7:38 p.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. This is a fresh start, my darling. This is an evening where we get to start again. We won't have the guiding light of the moon because it's a new one. It's over with the sun, so we won't see it. It'll be a black night, and we'll get to use the energy that's left here on planet Earth and in the stars too, and we get to make some wishes, make some plans for our next adventure. So I want you to be really proud of yourself at this one, Leo rising. I want you to kind of really celebrate your beauty and everything that you've accomplished to this point. And I also would probably encourage you to have a little think about the planet Uranus or Uranus and what they've been sort of chatting in your ear since about 2018 or 19. So Uranus is the planet that revolutionizes, that changes things, that has grand ideas and a different way of thinking and being. The tarot card that some folks would ascribe to the energy of Uranus is the Fool. And this is number 0 in the tarot. It's the cosmic egg, the beginning of something. There's something really kind of fresh and unafraid about the Fool. And so I want you to incorporate some of this kind of feeling into your new moon manifestation. If you prefer to look at pictures to learn about astrology, the tarot is a really great way to do that. If you just look at that image with that little knapsack and a little puppy dog that's keeping them safe, happy little dog too. If they were in danger, the dog would probably be cowering, but they're not. They're really excited about this next adventure. And that's what Uranus does. Uranus is in Taurus and has been since 2018 or 19. Well, I think it was the first pass was 2018. And then from 2019 onward, they've been sitting in your 10th house of your most public-facing self. The part of you that's really obvious and that people have access to. Kind of how you front up in this world. Maybe it's got something to do with your legacy too, what you wish to leave behind. So if you think about that and think about the last 3 years, the last 4 years probably, as a safer bet, what was beginning to happen for you? What was Uranus or the Fool trying to tell you about changing this up? There's parts of you that are really wonderfully beautiful and that you're being encouraged to share when you're ready. Now, Uranus is going to be in Taurus, in that public-facing house for you, Leo, until about 2026, when they'll finally move over into Gemini. So this is kind of like the midway point. And with the outer planets, we don't always feel their presence. But when they make specific aspects, it's a great time to talk about them. So this new moon at 23 degrees of Leo, the sun and the moon are conjunct, and they're forming an exact square with Uranus. So there's a bit of a kind of like shouting over the fence from Uranus saying, all right, new moon manifestation in the first house, sure. What about these cool things that I've been thinking about in terms of your public-facing self? Maybe you could include some of them. The other aspect that's happening several hours after, on the same day, but several hours after, just before midnight actually, Mars in Virgo will be forming trine with Uranus. And so that's earth sign to earth sign. Virgo for you, Leo rising, is your second house of your talents, your values, and your access to resources. So there's kind of like a boldness with Mars in that place for you. And they're having another conversation with Uranus, kind of almost being brave to sort of like step forward too. The 10th and the second house, when working in harmony together, you can see how the sort of like your talents, your values, what you believe in, what you think that you're worth, can really kind of aid and inform your public-facing self, what you might leave behind in this life too for other generations to follow. It's pretty bold. I'm pretty stoked for it, I'll be honest, Leo rising. I think that this will be a really nice, calming, inventive new moon for you. I know that the full moon in Aquarius, when we were talking about letting go of your intimate relationships and sort of clearing house in regard to that, may have brought up some trickier emotions. So on this side of the dial, we get to focus in on you. We get to really steep ourselves in the value of your soul's rising potential, Leo. And think about how, when you're ready, that will become visible. That will become something that is sewn into your legacy. Now, the day that I'm publishing these, on the 13th, hopefully, if I get it done in time, Today is the day of the Venus Cazimi in Leo, which means that Venus retrograde has gone backwards and formed an exact conjunction with the sun. It's sort of like a Passover too. Venus is either an evening star or a morning star. And this Passover will now create the morning star aspect of Venus, the brightest, most beautiful part of our sky. So maybe if we can journey back a little bit to the year 2015, and that was 8 years ago, so I hope it's not too much of a stretch for your memory. But I wonder if there was something that was occurring in the second half of 2015, July through to September-ish, if there was a burst of sort of freshness or beauty in the way that you regard yourself, the way that you kind of maybe separate from the public-facing self, separate from the kind of responsibilities of resources. This is just for you. This is just a moment to kind of sit and be like, I just love myself as I am right here, right now, at this very moment. Was there a little moment that you can think of in 2015 that had you believe that had you kind of, I was going to say high in your own supply, but, choose your term. Had you love yourself, Leo? Had you kind of all of that front-facing, heart-centered kind of motivation for you to show love and respect and kindness and pride for other people? Did you have a moment in the second half of 2015 where you were like, I'm a good person? Because it might be worth sort of thinking about that, and maybe hopefully today, if I'm on time, think about it too. You've done such a beautiful job. You really have, Leo rising. I've been with you for some time now, haven't I? And there's been things that we've had to kind of focus on and look at and sort of challenge. But with the right amount of tender loving care for oneself, we can move forward from this very moment, this new moon in Leo, and we can take a brave step like the Fool, like Uranus, and see the cliff and jump off. You're doing super, and I can't wait to see what other sides of you we get to enjoy as time goes on. In time, too, I do want to stress that Uranus will be leaving Taurus in like 2026. So we've got time. We've got time to sort of like stew on this, but maybe, tonight's the evening to practice the recipe. I think this one will be nice for us. I'm just going to get 3 cards, I think, just to put the stopper on this reading, Leo, and see us off into the next lunar cycle. I'm a Pisces rising, so I like to, every Pisces new moon, I like to consider it like a little New Year's Eve party for myself, to look at what has occurred over the last 12 months since the last new moon in my first house. So for you tonight, 12 months ago, think about August of 2022 to now, and just pat yourself on the friggin' back. Yeah. There's been some intentional stillness for you, I think, Leo rising. There's been a real choice to be inactive, and not because you're scared per se, not because you're sort of frightened, but the decisions can be made in the future. There's 2 versions of the truth, or perhaps differing perspectives, or perhaps different sort of projections intellectually of how this might go. The blindfold isn't doesn't put you in a sort of sub position. The blindfold's sort of there so you can really feel it out. You might notice that there's an eclipse there too. So while we've been talking about Uranus in your 10th house, we've also, for the past 18 months, been dealing with eclipses, power surges to your most front-facing self. And so it might have been kind of really exhilarating, but then really frightening as well. And there's been things that have maybe had to shed about your ancestry or about your private world too. Things that have fallen away in your sense of home, your sense of belonging, or the lines on which you can trace your lineage. Things have had to fall away. And there's been sort of, this like pulsing direction in the way that you are perceived. We're at the beginning of a brand new bold cycle, the Wheel of Fortune, and you can see there's Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, and Scorpio there too. So the first house of the self, the 7th house of relationships, the 10th house of your public perception, and the 4th house of privacy. That's sharp, and these are challenging places to change things up, to be the fool, to start again. But you're doing it, and you're doing such a beautiful job, Leo rising. And I think that what's going to come from that bravery, working with Uranus, learning about them, is a fresh sap of something really, really powerful and magical. I feel that there's going to be some sort of message that comes to you, Leo rising. It's going to be from someone pretty magical. It's going to be from someone who's kind of confident in their magical prowess. Might be a fire sign. I tend to think of fire signs when I see the ones in tarot. Ones are magic, right? Fire is magic. So go gently. And also I kind of would, I'd be reluctant to sort of, put the foot on the gas at the moment. New moons are quiet, and they can be private. They can be really private, especially in the first house. So you don't have to jump on in there just yet. And maybe you could even feel maybe confident that tarot is saying that this message is actually coming to you. Sometimes when the court cards show up in a tarot reading, they can be in reference to somebody else. So you don't have to sort of wear that responsibility of having to act, having to press the sort of ignition button. There's some sort of magical offering that might be coming to you soon, Leo rising. So keep your ears peeled. Keep working on this beautiful sense of self. Keep revitalizing and revolutionizing the way that people perceive you, your public perception. And you sort of can't go wrong. That was nice. That was nice. That's it. Do throw me a lion if you're still here with me, Leo rising. If you'd like your birth chart read, here's an example of one. Beautiful little constellation of planets. Head to Uma Ruby and you can pick the style of reading that you might like to have with me. If you're wanting to know more about the goddess asteroids, I've been working with them for some time now, and I'm at a point where I feel confident to find the correlations and the sort of relevance in a birth chart. Sometimes I'll bring them up in your reading if they're in really specific aspect to some of your other planets. But I think that they hold up on their own. So if that's something that you wanted to learn about, I haven't published the reading yet, but you can send me a message. You can say, include the goddesses. You can tip me at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby, and I'll be with you in 2 weeks again, this time to discuss the super blue moon in Pisces. Now, it's called a blue moon because it's the second full moon in the same month. So we had the Aquarius full moon at the start of the month. We're going to close out this month on the 31st with the blue moon in Pisces. It's going to be huge. It's going to be trippy. So I might even start preparing for those readings now so I can really enjoy it at the time. Much love to you, Leo rising. You the best. Take care. Bye. Hello, Sagittarius rising. Welcome to your horoscope for the new moon in Leo, happening on August the 16th at 7:38 p.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. So this is a great, beautiful black evening where we get to hope and wish and dream and pray for what we hope to receive in the coming round around the zodiac. So Leo for you rules your 9th house, which is where we expand our mind and where we develop our relationship with our spirituality and our cosmic ancestors, and maybe where we might start to sort of put that into practice and share it with other people. There's something kind of expansive about the 9th house in terms of publishing what it is that you know, putting it forward, putting it down and spreading it around. So let's work with that. I wonder if there's something that you've kind of got your finger hovering over the publish button at the moment, Sagittarius rising, or maybe it's just the sort of birthing of a concept. You might be planting some beautiful seeds around your access to consciousness at this time. You don't have to be a hippy dippy. It might be something else that you're sort of like putting into practice. But it's definitely going to benefit a lot of us. It's going to benefit the group, I would say. There's something that you're kind of maybe like your expertise in this particular area is something that maybe you can like reharness some of the pride around that too. Leo's really, really, really proud. They work from the heart. That's where they emanate from. In the zodiacal man, the medieval folks used to operate on certain parts of the body when the moon was in that sign. We don't do that anymore, thank heavens, but it's nice to see that's the sort of relationship between the body itself and why each zodiac sign has a part of the body that it sort of speaks to. So for Leo, it's the heart. So whatever it is that you are going to publish or that you're working on putting together and presenting, there's a lot of empathy and love attached to it. It's beautiful. It's really kind of like bold and powerful, but it's really like loving and gentle too. I'm just thinking of the card for Leo in tarot, which is the Strength card, right? I like this card because we can sort of embody both, as I believe that we can in life, if you want. The lion is being tamed, but not by aggression, not by brute force or anything like that. The figure in this card is using their empathy and their gentility and their sweetness and kindness to soothe that roaring lion. It's a great emblem of like self-soothing too. And maybe that's what you're sort of working on. Maybe that's something that you've been learning about recently, Sagittarius rising, as far as like channeling some of those hotter or warmer emotions, the kind of starker ones too, into something useful and resourceful for yourself and for other folks. But I will just gently remind you that this is the Strength card, and you know what's strongest? Being vulnerable, being empathetic, being kind. Takes far more strength to do that than it does to be judgmental or aggressive or cruel with your words. I understand that that's kind of like, that can be a temptation sometimes, particularly in the social constructs that we're living through right now, and the way that opinion has been so polarized. But I think as we're sort of moving with and through this time, hopefully we can come back to that Strength card more and more. Now, in tandem with this, there's a square that's going on straight off, and then there's a beautiful trine. So when I say square, I mean pressure. When I say trine, I mean support. So at the lunation, the sun and the moon are at 23 degrees of Leo in your 9th house, which is having you sort of be like, oh, I'm tempted to, or maybe I'm tempted to start the first draft. The pressure is coming from Uranus in Taurus in your sixth house, and this is your sort of daily grind. This is the repetition of life. Now, I would dare say that potentially for maybe the last 5 years or so, there's been little seeds in your mind as well about how you can revolutionize that area. Maybe that's a different way that you're approaching your body and your strength physically. That could be something that is spurring you on to, maintain a strong back through all of this. It could also have to do with a sort of rut. And there's no shame in that, because that's sort of a natural thing that does happen to most of us. We can sort of find ourselves kind of playing in the same groove, kind of like a record that's skipping. And all it sometimes takes is a bit of Uranus, a bit of the Fool to like flick us out of that groove. But when you regard your health and your body, your commitment, your repetition, what new perspectives or new ways of looking at that part of your life have been showing up for you since about 2018 and 19? The planet Uranus, like the Fool, is unafraid to start afresh. They can see where they were perhaps wrong or what's not working, and they've got solutions and fresher ideas of how to move forward. The Fool, you can see with that little puppy dog in the corner there, there's nothing judgmental about this. Any person that has a good relationship with dogs, with animals, you can probably trust, because animals have instincts that are far greater than ours. They can smell fear, they can smell trust, they can smell kindness. And so this is your kind of reminder in this card, if we wanted to talk about the Fool in relationship to Uranus, which a lot of modern astrologers do. And we lay that onto your sixth house of the grind, of the repetition that you're in. If you're feeling like you're sort of like slave to some sort of rhythm, or if that's been a growing feeling that you've been willing and wanting to shake for some time now, for about 5 years, then let's kind of use this pressure to inform what's going on in your ninth house of publishing and spirituality. Maybe there's things that you're learning from Uranus in your sixth house of the mundane that can be peppered into what it is that you're about to create or about to send out into the world. There's really no shame, Sagittarius, in sort of being led up a garden path. That's okay. And sometimes when we're working from fear, then we will lead ourselves up that garden path because we think it's safer. All it takes is a bit of strength to reassess. And remember, there's no violence or aggression or hatred in this card. It's actually all coming from a place of beautiful love. You're strongest when you're kind, Sagittarius. It's really important to remember. So that's the pressure. The support that comes a couple of hours after this lunation. So at about midnight, maybe a couple of minutes before midnight, Uranus, the Fool, is making a trine support with Mars in Virgo. So there's kind of like a feeling of like rolling with the punches. If we can sort of look at Mars and remember that it's a shield and a spear, you know, there's a sort of like protection with Mars. Sometimes in a shadier kind of aspect, it can bring about all sorts of violence, which maybe we're not so interested in. So for you, Mars is in your 10th house of your most public self, your public perception, how you wish to be known. There's a support here between Uranus in your 6th and Mars in your 10th. So it's kind of telling me, Sagittarius rising, that there's something in your perception of the mundane, or maybe how you're relating to your body, your health, that is going to inform your career, your most public-facing self. Maybe some of this heat in that area over the last couple of weeks or months is being turned into, rather than aggression, rather than sort of like blunt force and hatred, maybe it's being turned into something useful. I think that that's something that I'm really thinking about quite a lot, is how, and I think that you probably are too, Sagittarius rising, how can we be useful? How can I put my talents to best benefit through times like this, when things are so precarious, when people are broke, when they're sort of really scared about the bottom line, and when they're sort of like trying to look for something to blame too for that, and they're being fed some bullshit that's sort of diverting their attention to another area. It can be so frustrating, and especially if we feel there's a little bit of history repeating too, it's sort of like, oh, not again. You know, I can really feel that kind of, I can maybe feel that maybe in the way that you're sort of like have been speaking publicly too. I think that this is our opportunity to course correct. And I think this is our opportunity to remember the essence of that strength card. Remember Leo, remember that lion. Remember who's taking care of the lion. If this lion is internal, and if you've been roaring for some sort of like visibility or freedom of something, you've just been like, what about me? I'm freaking angry. Why is this happening? I don't get it. Why am I'm worried about my people too. That's something that can come up. You can be both of these things, and you've got access to calming and tempering your own lion as well. Let's get some intuitive tarot, I think, Sagittarius, because I really believe in what you've got to say, and I think that you've got some beautiful talents and some great skills that we can all enjoy. You know, you've got a great level of care and understanding for human beings, and that's what we're working with. They're the seeds that you can plant that will grow and flourish. There's some relationships in life that change us. There are some relationships that make us feel safe and supported and cared for. And the best thing that we can do when we get to enjoy these relationships is never take them for granted, and be as thankful as we can while they exist. There's a kind of pathway and a sort of like portal that we wish to step into. We wish to find the kind of flatlands where everything is beautiful and gorgeous and perfect forevermore. We know that that's kind of not really an option. When we have to say goodbye to someone, when we miss out on maybe the final chapter, or when we actually experience the final chapter of that relationship, we didn't realize that was the end one, we can get really, really, really angry and frustrated, and we can lash out. We can be that lion and we can start to roar. That sense of protection and that sense of safety and that comfort and warmth and understanding and tenderness as a feeling is something that we can access when we meditate, when we body scan and feel that where the heat is coming from, and when we long for that sort of blanket to protect us and to wrap us up. We can access that. Just takes practice. Saying goodbye is one of the most difficult things that any of us have to do. It's not fair. It can often feel really unfair. We're tempted to sort of flip the table, and to lash out, maybe at people that we don't even know, at a concept. I reckon that if you're longing for a bit of warmth and understanding and comfort at this time, Sagittarius, then maybe this is the new moon for you to really zone into your 9th house in a spiritual context. That's where you feel comfortable to go. Think about the 9th house as our access to our guides. And maybe have a little chat with the asteroid Ceres. Ceres was a great protector. Ceres taught us how to cultivate from the earth. Ceres was responsible for harvest and for crops and for the regeneration of natural resources. And her daughter, Persephone, was stolen from her by Pluto and dragged to the underworld. And Persephone was violated and trapped in that space, that darker sort of recess. And so it took Ceres all of her strength and might to go back calmly and retrieve what was taken from her, what was rightfully hers, the love of her daughter. And so sometimes when we're feeling lost and alone, we can reach out to Ceres, can maybe check to see where Ceres is playing out in our chart, find our placement too, and make our own commitment to go down to the underworld and to take back what's ours. And in this context, Sagittarius rising, I think that this might be the younger version of you before the heartbreak, before the loss, that is crying out for a hug, for a bit of love and attention. And you can do that. I guarantee it. I trust you. That's your reading, Sagittarius rising. Thank you very much for being here. If you still are, throw a lion in the comments, won't you? I'll be back with you in 2 weeks and we will discuss the super blue moon in Pisces, which is going to be a bit of a trip. So I look forward to that one. If you'd like me to read your birth chart, you can head to umaruby.com and I can draw you up one similar to this and we can go through your thumbprint on the earth. You can tip me at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby. I love you lots. Be the lion. That's okay. Roar as loud as you are able. And also give yourself a hug after. Because love is the answer. Hate isn't. Take care.